Welcome to the Josh Bolton Show, where we dive into interesting and inspiring conversations. And now, your host, Josh Bolton.
There he is.
Hey, what's going on, sir?
Not much. And yourself?
I'm doing good. Glad to be hanging out with the guy who's just the guy with the microphone talking to awesome people.
Right?
What's going on, man?
Not much. Just chilling in my room, waiting for you.
Awesome. Where are you at in the world?
Do you know where LA is in California?
LA?
Los Angeles?
Oh, yeah. Come on. That's
also,
where you
if
are.
you don't know it, there's actually some people that talk to like LA, Los Angeles, where's that? I'm
Really? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm over here in Vegas. So,
it's easy for you.
yeah, it's like we're like next door neighbors in the closest way you can make it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I'm a Rams fan too, so I'm in LA a lot.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome. So, I see you've written at least 7 books that I can determine from your shelf?
Read or written?
Okay, no, that's Art of War. Yeah, you didn't do that one.
No, I didn't write any.
Okay.
I haven't written it. No, I haven't written any yet. In fact, it's funny that you just mentioned writing because that is my goal one of my goals for 2022 is to become an author.
There you go. There's plenty of opportunities now. You don't have to just go through traditional publishing.
Yeah, my business partner wrote one. He wrote one. So he wrote this one.
Okay.
Friend of mine, Matt, I got books down there from friends, and now I'm over it because they're sending me their damn books, and I'm like, I'm not on the.
I'm going to say I can't read through all this. Send me the Audible. Maybe we get through it.
Yeah. No, I enjoy books. I like Audible too, for sure. Definitely helps me get through books faster when I'm doing other stuff. So
I like it for getting through faster. But like, I read a 50-hour book, The Gulag Archipelago. Boy, I would never read that normally. Through the
it wouldn't happen.
No way.
I've got a 30-hour book that I've got a 20-something hour. I got two 20-something hour books that I've yet to tackle. And I think I've got a 31-hour book, and I've never seen a 50-hour book.
Oh, dude, that was the abridged version too.
Oh, what was the name of it again?
Gulag Archipelago. It's a very depressing book. It is essentially life in the Soviet Union camps.
Oh, interesting.
But it's one of those, it's like it shows you the true evil of like humans, but it's also at the same like that. Have you read the book Thinking Fast and Slow?
No, I haven't tackled that. Is that
that's another one I recommend. Michael Kelly, I believe.
Kelly?
Something. I'll pull him up. Hang on.
No, I know the book. It's a thick, tough read. I've heard.
That's when I paid the $30 because I'm like, I tried to read the little like free 2 chapters, and I'm like, this is a lecture.
It's a hard read. I've heard it's a hard read. I'm almost certain I have it.
It is definitely one. If you, I bought the actual audio version. Yeah, you can get through that. Then you read the Gulag Archipelago. It makes so much more sense from a scientific side. Why they did everything they did.
I like it. Yeah, you're. What's your fascination with learning? I like talking to learners, people that are.
For me, really, my whole journey started back in like March 2020. I was curious why people were dancing like the best thing since sex in the street, and some are crying like Beelzebub entered the room in March for the crash. I mean, I knew of the stock market, but I'm like, oh, that's what the rich people do kind of thing. I can't play that game. And as I read more, I'm like, oh, wait, I can actually easily play this game. So I was like, how does trading work? Oh, you're buying a business. Yeah. How does business work? Oh, okay, it's mindset. How does mindset work? Oh, it's spirituality kind of thing.
all roads lead the same.
They pretty much.
They do. That's awesome.
And it was just like, for me, I've always wanted to start the show, but I was fearful. I'm like, oh, if I do it, like the Twitter mobs are going to come after me and all that shit. And I'll lose my current job. Now, like looking back at it, I'm like, you're an idiot. That's free advertising.
Yeah. What do you do currently?
I work night shift at a local grocery store. I am like hoofing it to get out of there now.
Dude, that's awesome, dude. So my first job ever was at a grocery store. I don't list it as when I get asked a lot about my first job, I don't usually say it because it was really just 2 months. It was And the reason it was only 2 months is because I played football and I got the job in June. I had to quit in August to play football, or should I say they let me go because I couldn't work the schedule after school started. But anyway, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So keep doing what you're doing. Whatever. Sounds like you got the entrepreneurial bug. You're obviously a reader. You're a learner. How old are you?
28.
Okay, good for you, man. If I can support in any way, I started my entrepreneurial journey at 20. So, we may talk about that today. Speaking of which, what do you want to talk about today?
I want to say it kind of seems like we just went into it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Whatever you, I'll follow your lead.
So, Darrell Evans, right?
Yep, Darrell Evans.
Can you just tell the people who are now coming in like 5 minutes later, like, who the heck is this guy?
Who is he? Who is this guy we already been talking to for a while? Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. I love connecting with people, and just already, I can tell that you're my kind of guy. Someone who's reading, someone who's learning, someone who's starting to question what they see in the world, someone who's saying, well, why is that? And so Darrell has been a very much the same kind of guy. As I started to mention a moment ago, I did like everybody. I got a job. I ended up wanting just some money in my pocket. Turned out I started at a place called Taco Bell, college kids' favorite. And before I knew it, I was a general manager. From fry cook to general manager, started my college, learning at that time. But I also had this entrepreneurial bug. So I started my first business around 20 out of the trunk of my car. And from that point forward, I was like, I'd later learn a phrase that I just love, which Jim Rohn said, which is profits are better than wages. And yes, I realized that was the case. So I was going out to a swap meet on the weekends. I was selling sportswear. I'm a big sports fan. So I was buying wholesale. Today, you can drop ship. There was no such thing back then. Maybe there was, but it was probably over my head.
Yeah, it was really probably complicated.
Yeah, I'd send a real check to a real vendor, buy real product, real boxes would show up, and then I'd pack it up in my car and go set up stand it with rent. So anyway, that was my early start. But then also from there went on to, obviously that was a side hustle, and moved into the world of real estate. Finished my college degree in the world of finance, thinking I wanted to go work on Wall Street as a trader. But really the world of finance kept calling me. So I went into the world of financial services for a couple of years, moved forward into back to the real estate and lending industry, which is where I sort of made my first entrepreneurial, drew the line in the sand. And that's when there was no looking back. There was no cushion. There was no turning back. And so that was 2000. And fast forward to today, I left that career after 10 years, did really well there. Obviously 2008, 2009 happened. Everybody knows that story. So I won't rehash.
Right.
Went through some adjustments, what I call breakdowns, and started thinking about my next level of breakthrough, which is something I talk about a lot on my show. And ended up realizing that the world of business, I had already adopted the world of the internet, started using the internet 2003, 2004 for sales, marketing, lead generation, et cetera, understanding the leverage and scale capability. And I'd realized in 2009, 10, people weren't thinking that way. Business owners still weren't thinking that way. So I'm like, let me start helping them do that. And I also wanted some other things with my life. And so we started a digital marketing agency back in 2011, my business partner and I. And now we've been running that agency for about 11 or so years. And we've helped small, mid-sized companies generate north of 300 million in revenue. And so we've been on a fun ride with helping small business owners grow.
That's awesome. So, okay, I'm curious with you because I'm noticing a problem with the iOS 14 update. How's it affecting you guys on your end?
Well, so you got to think, for me, Josh, I grew up in the world before the internet. So I get a perspective of what it's like to have to communicate in an analog way, as well as in a way that doesn't get clouded by today's data. Like, I am a data guy. I love analytics. I love optimizing conversion. That's my deal. That's my jam. It's my cup of tea. Right. It's what I'm wired to do. So for me, iOS doesn't bother me one bit, nor does Facebook's algorithm changes. None of it bothers me because of one thing. At the end of the day, what matters is what I call engagement. And open rates to me aren't engagement. Click-through rates are. So if we're talking about email and specifically iOS, what iOS's jam, it's affecting our Facebook ads in a way. Yes. And obviously Facebook wouldn't have hired what I heard is 260 engineers to fix the issue with their ad platform. But here are two big giants fighting with one another for the benefit of the consumer, because let's be clear, while I am a digital marketer and I love all the tracking pixels and I love all the stuff that we can use to optimize and follow people around the internet, and hopefully, there are a lot of companies who do it wrong. My private consumer self says it's too intrusive, right? So I'm on two sides of the fence. Mm-hmm. Having said all that, I think when I think about the issues with iOS, number one, you should never be using open rate on your email as and I'm going to speak to email for a second, then I'll go to ads.
Okay.
You should never worry about open rates. Your email should be driving engagement. What does that mean? An engagement to click through and do something else, or what a lot of people miss, Josh, is asking for a reply. See, Josh, if you and I are having a conversation, we are going to talk to each other mano a mano, right? Whether that's text message through this medium that we're on today or via email. What marketers tend to want to do is they just want to get someone to open something and go buy something. And that's where I see a lot of people go wrong. So what about engaging in a dialogue? And I think this is going to force bad marketers out. And those of us that know how to do what we call build like, know, and trust factor, and let the sale happen when it's their time, mm-hmm. not when we want it to happen. So that's part one. iOS doesn't bother me one bit, doesn't bother our agency. We haven't changed one thing. It's still about, do you have a relationship with the email list person that's on your list? If you don't, they'll unsubscribe. They'll take care of that themselves, or they will filter you and put you in spam. And that's your fault too. It's all your fault, right? If you don't keep them interested, engaged, it's your fault as a business owner. Part two, digital ads. So we can't track people the way we used to, because if they're on an iOS device, we can't target them now, whatever the case is. Well, okay, go back to the same conversation. What would I do if I was offline? Because when I had an offline meeting with you, Josh, if we met at an event and we shook hands and exchanged business cards, what would I do then to keep in touch with you? I wouldn't hammer you with ads everywhere you went.
That'd be actually kind of creepy.
Yeah, my ad wouldn't show up if you went to Starbucks the next day without me. No, the goal is to now do what it would take to build a relationship if, in fact, we believe we have a mutually beneficial reason to stay connected. So I think about digital. The goal of digital is to figure out, A, are you getting a message in front of someone who cares? B, if they care, they now are going to take the step towards you to want to stay in touch with you. And that could be a bunch of different things today. It could be following your social media profiles, Instagram, Facebook, whatever the case. It could be that they are latching onto your website and joining your email list from there. So I'm not concerned. The goal of good marketing, the goal of good communication is to become aware, right? Make yourself aware to your ideal customer, prospect. And actually, I've got an interesting comment that struck me odd when I was working with a venture capitalist one time. Okay. But B, make sure that what you're saying is relevant. And if it's not, shame on you. And if they decide they don't want to pay attention to you anymore, that's your fault. And so the reality is the world's a big place. Find the people that do want to pay attention to what you've got to say. So I'm not worried about iOS. I don't think anybody should freak out. It's not, everybody wants to say it's the end of Facebook. It's the end of Facebook ads, whatever. Okay.
Zucks will figure it out.
Ads. Yeah. Just figure it out.
Yeah. Zucks is a survivor. He'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Another reason I brought it up is I noticed when they mentioned it, I was like, I could see the consistent trend of data, and then suddenly it just fell off a cliff. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. Even I don't know where I'm at anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'll tell you where everyone should gauge their conversation right now. Number one, the number one asset, and I talked about that. I've been talking about this for almost 2 decades now. Since 2003, I've been doing email marketing. And I look around today and I see this is the biggest problem I have to fix when companies come and work with me. One of the first questions I ask is, how big is your email list? Which means not customer base. See, I always get the answer, well, I've got this many customers. And you'd be surprised, Josh, that at this stage in the game, what I would call 15 years in the internet land world, 10 solid years that people should have been paying attention. And now after post-pandemic, and we're roughly 20-ish months out of not out of the pandemic, but we're roughly 20 months since that whole thing broke down.
Right.
And you'd be surprised to know how many people don't even have an email address for their existing customers.
No, they don't.
Not even the existing customers. Number two, they're not doing anything to build a relationship digitally. They're just trying to post stuff to get people to buy. And what they don't realize, and this isn't my study, I'm just repeating the statistics from the study that I latched onto many, many years ago. There's an organization, and for the life of me right now, I can't think of it, but they essentially do follow-up data surveys on people who didn't buy a thing. It happened to be that in this one of these surveys, it was either newsletter subscriptions or magazine subscriptions, some sort of media purchase.
Right.
They would follow up with people 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to find out what percentage of people actually did complete a purchase in the category for which they inquired on day one. And what they found is that 50% of all people would actually buy the thing that they inquired about, but they just wouldn't buy it that day. 50% would buy it 18 months within the 18-month window. A lot of times what marketers and advertisers do, they're trying to convert what is about a 2 or 3% available market at that moment, meaning they've raised their hand, they're in motion, they're in what I call the decision stage. The problem is all your competitors are trying to convert the same customer in the decision stage. Now, this is outside of referrals, right? Outside of word of mouth, right. Which word of mouth and referrals don't scale. They're good. They're highly profitable, but they don't scale. You can't scale a word of mouth business. Show me one business that has gone public and they said
strictly off word of mouth. Yeah, I've not heard of that either. I wouldn't invest in it. It'd be like, nope.
So word of mouth doesn't scale. So what we're talking about is this addressable market via Google ads, Facebook ads, whatever the medium is. But what they don't understand is that 15% of all of those people that visited that store, that product, that ad, that website actually bought within 90 days. 15%. Right. So now the number gets interesting because what most people do is they get the contact, they get the prospect, and they assume that the person was ready to buy that day. Thus, they only follow up. By the way, statistics says that people today buy after 7 to 11 touch points. 7 to 11. I don't know if it's right or wrong. What I will tell you is in my 30 years, it's true. It's somewhere beyond 2 or 3. And unfortunately, Josh, most people quit after 2 or 3 follow-ups, or they don't even follow up past the first inquiry and they didn't buy on the first call. So the bigger part of that then is, okay, here's the 15% that are buying within the first 90 days. And then, of course, there's another percentage of that, 35% that are going to buy between 90 and 180. My point is we make the most money for our clients on that 90 to 18-month window. And I learned this back in the real estate business. I didn't need the study to confirm what I'd already known. Because Josh, when I started in real estate in 1992, while I was still in college, it was never urgent or immediate that someone had to buy a house.
No.
It was never immediate.
No.
It was never urgent. So if they contacted me, and this played out in financial services, this played out when I was in the mortgage industry, it has played out in my agency, it has played out in almost every professional service business I've helped now over the last, not me personally, but my whole team, what we've done the last 11 years, It's played out, and it goes for software. People don't even get it. Even a $7 a month subscription to a piece of software goes through the same thing, and they do the same problem. They sign you up for the free trial. They give you the beatdown series over 8 days, right? So it's a 7-day free trial. You get the emails over the 7 days. And then after that, they wonder why you didn't sign up and you never hear from them again. Sign up for the next free trial and watch what I tell you. I've been trying to solve this problem for years. So the money's made in the follow-up. And today you can just do it a lot of ways, whether it's with ads, whether it's with email, with the good old fashioned telephone, with text messaging, with a cadence of having a podcast where people can listen to your expertise as you share your thoughts through a YouTube channel. There's no shortage of ways, but we have to get people to understand they've got to get in that game. If you get in that game, your ROI goes up, your scalability goes up. And that's the conversation a lot of people don't like to have.
Oh, it is. That's where I'm just sitting here. Like, you're touching on a lot of stuff. I have a mentor every Thursday. Actually, I'm not sure if we're going to do it Thanksgiving, but that's the biggest one. He pushes though for like guerrilla warfare tactics, email marketing, like twist their heart, make them go to hell. And I'm like, okay, that's a little extreme. Are you at least going to give them a ladder? And he's like, that's the sale. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I'm not that mean yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. So funny that still exists. I'm not saying there isn't. I went to a seminar back in 2000 or 1992 or 3 or 4 in my early years of real estate. And I remember the pitch or the attitude that he was talking about, that he was teaching, was you should never put anyone in your car unless they were going to buy. His point was buy or get out of my car. And I think it was if I look back, I can think, while I think it was an aggressive approach to a thought process, he was trying to say, you have to do a better job qualifying prospects. And that's what I took away from it. And so, but to the point of what you were just saying, I think that type of marketing, or this buy or get out of my car, or, I did a almost 2 hour free consultation session yesterday. Why on God's green earth would I do that? Well, the person, and by the way, the person couldn't hire me. I knew it from about 15 minutes into the call. I knew she couldn't hire me. This has nothing to do with her as an entrepreneur. I just knew that where she was in the stage of the business was, it wouldn't make sense to hire me for a full engagement. It happens a lot. So Darrell, why then were you on the call that long? Well, because she needed help.
Yeah.
She needed help.
A true good entrepreneur will see someone struggling and be like, that was there at one point and I needed that call like this, so I'll help them.
100%. And here's the punchline people don't get. She doesn't need to go into my email gauntlet series. She doesn't need to go into the 8-piece thing. She needed help. She asked a couple of questions. I talked her through it. It turned out that she left saying, I would have paid $1,500 for this call. I'm so grateful. She asked me for my address. She goes, I want to send you something as a thank you gift. I don't do it for that.
Right.
But here's what I know. Here's what I now know. I invested in a person who I know for a fact is going to succeed. And there's some reasons I won't get into here. I know for a fact she's going to succeed. She's going to get to the point where she's going to be like, I need someone to help me in these 3 categories, which are things that we talked about on the call, which are things that I do and what we do. And there's going to be a point where the tipping point is going to hit. I will have been embedded in her head, provided I stay in touch in a lighthearted way. And all I'm doing is waiting, Josh. Mm-hmm. Once she gets to that tipping point, which I already know what it is. I already know what it is. I've been doing this a long time. Mm-hmm. My job is to make sure I stay relevant and present until that day comes, because it will come. That day will happen, and it will not be a sales process. It'll be a call that goes like this, because it happens like this all the time. It'd be like, Darrell, I'm ready to go to the next level. And there won't have to be a sales pitch. Where do I sign? And let's get started. And that is when, people hate selling. And I've never sold anything in my life. I've never sold anything in my life. No, but I've never sold anything in my life. I've done 7,000 sales consultations in my prior career. I can't tell you how many I've done in this current last year, 11-year run, but I've never sold a thing. And this guy said to me one time at one of our live events, and he says, Darrell, I've never met anybody make more money giving away all his information for free.
That's the best way, because it makes you a true authority in what you're talking about, like a trust authority.
Yeah. There's this thing called law of reciprocity. I didn't make it up. It's Dr. Robert Cialdini.
Okay.
And again, I've learned principles after the fact for which I did it, meaning I don't do things because it was in the book. I'm reading things now and learning things now from people who are really smart in the world of psychology that I just thought were normal. I just did them because it seemed like the right thing to do. And now I'm validated now because of all these books and all these high level thinkers are writing about these psychology laws. I have no background in psychology. I feel like I've got sort of this literal degree from being in front of people now for the last 30 years, working in marketing and sales and entrepreneurship. But the reality is, in the book, Influence, he talks about the law of reciprocity. And it's really, at its simplest form, if you and I'm coming out of the grocery store, you're going into the grocery store, and I'm coming out and I see you're about to walk in, what am I likely to do? Hold the door.
Yeah.
If I'm walking behind you and you drop your wallet or your cell phone or your child's binky, right? What am I'm seeing? I see what you didn't see. I'm likely going to bend down, pick it up and say, here, you didn't see that you dropped this. It's just the law of reciprocity at play at the very basic level. Well, there's that. It plays at the highest level too, when you give people information that they deem valuable, or you give them an experience that they deem valuable that they didn't pay, it does something in the psychology to be reminded that that person is trustworthy, that person doesn't have an agenda. Some people do have agendas. Don't get me wrong. Some people give you the thing for free only to give you the hard pitch at the end. Just come to Vegas and walk down the strip and get invited into one of those timeshare meetings. Figure that one out.
Ooh, those are, man,
those
they got
brutal.
it down to a science too.
They do. They're brutal though. I mean, don't fall for it. Just go get your own steak dinner.
Right.
So anyway, I don't want to go off on tangent there, but this idea of giving first, the sale will take care of itself, because at the end of the day, 50% of them are going to buy. You already know that if you believe the study that I said, 50% of them are going to buy. That's 1 out of 2. The problem is, will you be around 6 months later, 9 months later, 12 months later? And that's how I built my real estate mortgage practice. And I didn't care when you were going to buy. I just knew you were.
Mm-hmm.
And I just stayed present and relevant. And how do you do that? You just help. You don't sell. You just help.
That's honestly the biggest tactic for me. So I used to sell martial arts. That's when I realized I was an entrepreneur, but I was just a kid out of high school. I'm like, oh, this is just one of those fluke things. Now I realize, oh no, my instructor really taught me some legit skills. And that was the biggest one, because when I first started doing it, it was like 2012-ish is when I started actually like teaching full time.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, there wasn't really text message marketing kind of thing, at least to the scale it is now. So I literally sat there with my personal phone number. I sat with my instructor. We did a generic like copy. I just, because I didn't always know their name. So it was just a general but polite way of addressing them, but not addressing them, explaining me, who I am and all that. I got way more conversions with text because it was unknown back then. I literally was just throwing my personal number out to random phone numbers from the Yellow Book kind of thing. No, it would be white pages. Either way, I actually had an old school flip one too.
Gotcha.
And it was just one of those, my instructor couldn't figure it out. And I said, honestly, if someone called me to sell something, I'd hang up. But if someone texted me, it's kind of less evasive. I'm like, okay, I'll give this guy a try.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah. And I'm like, that was my only logic behind it. And I think at one point I was averaging like 600 to 700 a week with just commissions.
Wow.
But then it was like Josh, you have to get a real job. And lost a lot of money after that.
Oh, wow. Well, you just spoke to an idea, and that is you were willing to experiment, try something new. Everybody's going left. Let me try going right, and it worked. Yeah.
And it was just one of those, I actually gave my own personal time. I didn't realize it's the law you were presenting, because my instructor would only give one free lesson. After that, we have to talk shop and you have to sign out kind of thing. I'd tell him, this is not enough. You don't have the money. I'll give you personally 3 extra lessons on my own dime, my own time. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about the crazy Armenian guy with the big goatee. You're fine. And that's how I kept getting my conversions. Even if they didn't have the money, they figured it out how to get the money.
Yeah.
And
So much wisdom in that. And it's natural for you. The people that really make it rigid will lose, because the consumer is in control today. The consumer doesn't need you. In fact, they've done 85% of their research before they ever approached you. And that's the shift of today's world of internet and information being at our fingertips. And a lot of business owners that struggle with this, or marketers or salespeople that struggle with this, will just continue to struggle because they think it's all about them. It's not about you. They've almost made their decision by the time they reach out. They're looking for a couple of things that should line up or don't line up. And you can't take it personal because they've usually made up their mind before they even got to you.
Right. So. Right. Yeah. And that was one of those, like, he had me reading all these different mantra books and like law of attraction. I believe it is a thing, but I don't think it's as potent as he portrayed it to be. But it's just young buck kid. I haven't really reassessed that back then, but it was just one of those, that was the hardest one. He's like, if you have a lead, no matter what, beat it to a pulp, get every ounce out of it. And I'm just sitting here going, like, you didn't do that with me when you pitched the sale. You literally I'm like, because how he got me was at a LA fair. I had my little the super sugary confection funnel cake.
Hmm.
I had my funnel cake and a freaking huge big gulp of soda. I was a big boy back then. And pretty much he told me, he's like, I could just see rage in your eyes, but you had nowhere to put it. So he's like, that's why I said to you specifically, you want to learn how to break people's limbs ethically? I'm like, ooh, done. And I told him, like, yeah, that right there, once you did that, the free 30 minutes lesson, done. Right. I was sold. Like,
yeah. But what's interesting, what's interesting about what he did, which is, I hear this a lot, right? So part of what he did was he met you where you were with your energy, which is psychological, right? So I always tell people today, offline or online, you just have to meet people where they are.
Right.
Whatever he picked up in terms of your energy, he invited you for a way to release that energy. That is not a sale, because there was probably something underneath your skin that was like, yeah, I want to release this energy. The idea of never let a lead get away from you. I can think about the car business type of mantra.
That's where he got it
back
from.
in the day, go on the lot, you want to buy a car, or you're just looking for a car. They say, hey, you want to test drive? Great. Give them the driver's license. They never give you the driver's license back until they put you through the gamut of, if I could, would you? Right. This is a very old school tactic. I learned it in my 20s as well. If I could, would you is one of the most powerful phrases to get someone to take a step towards the purchase. The problem is it can go horribly wrong, especially back in the day. I don't know how it is today, because pretty much I don't go in a car dealership anymore unless the car deal is done.
Online now.
Yeah, I mean, either it's online or the deal was done over the telephone. I'm just going to pick up the car, whatever the case is. The reality is, if I could, would you? One of the most powerful sales phrases you could ever use. I learned it from someone named Zig Ziglar, who's passed away several years ago. One of the absolute best in the business at being genuine in your sales, at least in my opinion. And I learned that phrase, and it's always been in my tool belt. If I could, would you? So this idea, though, of I also learned early in my sales days that there's a formula that if you just pay attention to it with your prospect, it'll save you from this idea of, whether they'll buy now or buy later. And so there's only 4 types of prospects: people that are ready to buy now, who are good prospects, or they're good prospects and they'll buy later, or there's bad prospects that you try to sell now, or bad prospects that you try to sell later. And let's be clear, 2 of them you should not be worried about. And what do I mean by that? Most people don't even qualify who is a good prospect for them, right? And that's for a whole nother kind of conversation. Like, I know for a fact who's a good prospect for me. It doesn't mean I'll never talk to them. Doesn't mean if you're not a good prospect, I won't have a dialogue with you. I just am not going to try to sell you anything. I'm not going to invite you into my world if I know you're in those 2 other categories. The other piece is, there's a formula that I learned, and I know it was created, I believe it was created by IBM. I think it tracks back to IBM back in the day, and how they taught their corporate sales team. And it was a pre-qualification formula. It was called BANT, BANT.
Oh, I've heard that before. Okay.
Yeah. It's popular. It's been around. I mean, there's some modifications to it today, but the reality of it is that you got to make sure you're talking to someone who has a budget, which means you got to ask questions to qualify whether they have the budget to buy your thing. You've got to question whether or not they have the authority to make the decision. So A for authority. B, or the N, is need. Do they actually have a need that your product or service can solve? A real need. And then the last piece is timing, meaning on what time schedule do they really want to solve the problem? And so until and unless you are clear on that, there is no sale. And what I tell people all the time, and I learned a long time ago, and by the way, I've had quotas. So some people say to me, Darrell, well, you're not working under a quota like I do. No. I've had plenty of quotas. When you're an entrepreneur and you set goals, I've got a quota. I just self-manage my quotas. I just don't always have them top down. The reality is, I don't control their budget. I don't control their actual true need. I can ask questions to uncover if in fact they have the need and whether or not my product or service can help. And I really can't control the timing. What I tend to do with the A, with authority, is say, not only am I talking to the authority who can make the decision, but I flip it out and say the work is really in, do they believe I'm the authority to solve their problem? Do they see me as the authority to solve their problem. That's where I spend, and that's where I teach all my clients. And that's what we do in digital marketing today is we try to say, hey, can we position your organization, your firm, your product or your service such that they believe that you are the authority whenever those other three line up? And that is where it's really a game of patience. And the funny thing is, anyone who says, well, I don't have time to wait for all that is just simply not spending enough money on lead generation as their main focus, because there will be no shortage of leads if you're actually marketing daily. And that's what a lot of people, they just don't do. They do a little bit of something and, or they go to the networking event or they go to the conference, or they run 2 Facebook ads, or they post 22 things on Instagram, whatever. And they just stick their toe in the water and wonder why they don't have enough leads. Therefore, they can't put what I call the law of large numbers at play, because there's always going to be 2 or 3 that are ready to go today. There's always going to be 12 or 13 that are going to do it in 90 days if you believe the earlier study. So I say that if we're going to believe something, we should believe something. Right? So if you believe, that peanut butter goes with jelly on bread, then let's eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich until, that's my favorite sandwich to this day.
It is.
But it's the best, and I can experiment with honey. And I can use jam. And of course, it's all organic today, whatever. But the point is peanut butter and jelly always goes together. So I found this study, and I was actually taught it by a mentor, and I have just never disagreed with the study. And so I just don't even bother trying to disagree with the study. I know that 50% of everybody that comes into my world is going to buy the thing that I sell, because it's not like they were up in the middle of the night. They just couldn't wait to talk to a marketing guy. It's not like they just couldn't wait to talk to a business coach. Like they didn't stay up at night saying, oh, I can't wait to talk to a business coach named Darrell tomorrow. Right. So if I believe that 1 out of 2 are going to do the thing that I provide, now it's just a matter of a numbers game of me positioning my level of information to where they believe I'm the authority. And it obviously doesn't work that I get 1 out of 2 leads that close every single time. That's not the way it works. But the methodology, the mindset, the framework, that's how the blueprint is played. And the faster business owners get it, the better off they usually are. And that's what happens with, we don't get to 300 million with small businesses, if this doesn't work.
Oh God, no. I'm just like, as you're explaining this and I'm listening, one of my, I was super into weightlifting before the pandemic. I actually was doing really good. Yeah. Pandemic like screwed that all up. But the this vitamin shop, like a supplement shop, I would go to all the time. And that's what I was thinking. I'm like, wow, it's like that 5 to 7 point he was talking about. I showed up, I do my they had a really fancy weighing machine, tell you your body fat, weight, your bone mass, kind of, it's like super cool, expensive too.
Yeah.
It was free.
Oh,
there was no obligation.
Nice.
And then the guy would just casually ask, like, hey, can I just see your chart? Give you just free recommendation kind of thing. Super fit. I was like, oh, hey, yeah. And he's like, hey, I know you, because I told him, like, I was upfront, like, I don't really have cash. I just know your machine. That's where he said, if you can ever scrap together $300, I recommend this thing. It will help you out. And literally 2 weeks later, I managed to somehow pull it together, did my weight, and I said, okay, I want that supplement now. But it was just, that's what I'm thinking about. He literally didn't push it. It was just a recommendation, free of charge. Yeah. Go about your day, kind of thing. Have fun. And and I just immediately was back there at hardcore. I haven't gone recently because, pandemic, and where I'm at, huge case spike. So I'm like, I missed the gym though.
Yeah, no, he did something to your point. He was like, okay, here's the information. And if you could, this could. He used if you pretty much, could, yeah, this could help. And the issue is if it wasn't important to you, you wouldn't have got the cash together and you wouldn't have bought the thing. So
right.
Yeah, but he put himself, he just put himself in a position to offer you something that could help if you wanted to take him up on it.
Yeah.
And soft close.
Oh yeah. And he knew it was like one of those, he knew it was going to close. He was just kind of like the patience game.
Timing.
This month, next month, who knows? But I'll get him.
Yeah. Play the numbers game.
Yeah. It was one of those, I'm thinking like, wow, yeah, that was like about 5 times I visited him on like the 6th or 7th. He got the sale.
Yep.
So So what are some other things? Because you mentioned you do coaching. What are the coaching you do specifically to help people?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So the marketing agency, obviously, it's digital marketing and sales growth. What we call demand generation, if we're really getting technical. But at the end of the day, our clients pay us to help them grow revenue. In my world, in my walk, being an entrepreneur now for about 30 years, 6 different businesses, ups and downs, learned a lot, studied a lot. I've been coached and mentored now since 2002, whether it's through masterminds, one-on-one coaching, having an advisor or multiple advisors at the same time. One thing I've learned is I didn't get here on my own. I read a book years ago. I take issue with conversations around self-made whatever, self-made millionaire, self-made this. And the reality is you're not. No one here on this planet is self-made. Yes, you put in your time, you put it. It is. It bothers me. So I read a book years ago, and it wasn't that the book, it just validated something I was saying. And the book title gave you the whole story. And the title was "Who's Holding Your Ladder?" So it's a leadership book. You can probably pick that up. And the reality was, it was a reminder that no matter how high you've climbed, someone has been helping you steady the ladder so you can get to that elevated state. And that's a short couple of sentences on it. The reality is I have valued and recognized that a lot of what I've been able to do has been because of my team, because of people that I've hired, people that I've outsourced to, people that I have I've really aligned with what their gifts were, what their unique gifts were, so that I could really do my thing. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs get trapped in. They make a few mistakes. They're not really clear on what they really want. They start the business and they're not necessarily clear. And there's a lot of unclear things that are going on, but in general, they're not clear. They're not clear who their ideal customer is. They're not clear the number one customer they should be going after. They're not clear on the outcome they can deliver for the customer. They're not clear on the delivery system. They're not clear on what they want their life to look like. And it's funny because I was given the opportunity to sit back and say, how do you want your life to look like? What do you want your ideal day to look like? And I was able to go back and get some information from a coaching program I was in that said, work through that first. So get clear on that first. The next piece to that conversation was, what are the systems, right? We look at places like McDonald's. I worked at Taco Bell, and now today, everyone agrees that systems, the acronym, save yourself time, energy, and money. But how do you actually build operational systems, marketing systems, campaigns like we're talking about that just work on autopilot? How do you know when to follow up on a prospect? How do you know when not to? How do you know how many times you should? How do we do it here? For example, if you go to McDonald's, for example, it happens the same way all the time, no matter where you are in the world eating at McDonald's. There's magic in that. Now, we don't have to be this multi-billion-dollar, if not trillion-dollar company. I don't know what they're worth. But we all agree that it's the systems that have made them successful. Now, granted, they're a real estate company and some other things, but right. The reality of that business model is they figured out how to solve hunger fast, systematically, I think with an average age of 18-year-old people working there. And I don't know about some of your listeners, but I've had 18-year-olds. In fact, I've got the last of my kids will be 18 this next year. And sometimes getting them to clean up their room is hard, but they can go and operate.
They can go work for a big company and that's no problem.
Yeah. So the point of what we do in our coaching is, so we are trying to get vision, clarity. We're trying to work on the marketing, operation, and sales systems. Even when you're a solopreneur, you've got to have these things in place. Otherwise, you find yourself at a place of burnout. I come from my own personal experience, spending too many hours from sunup to sundown, taking a short break to eat dinner, maybe play with my kids. And then when they go to bed, I'm back at it from 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock till 2 a.m, 3 a.m, only to be back at it again, 7 o'clock in the morning. And there's this thing that we do as entrepreneurs, and we just want to figure it out. And I believe that there's a necessary component of that as an entrepreneur, because you don't get a necessary blueprint. You don't get a blueprint like McDonald's when you start, unless you start a franchise, you don't get one of those things that says, here's how we do it. You've got to create that on your own. So I work with a lot of companies and entrepreneurs on these systems that'll give them time freedom, leverage, it'll cost efficiency and effectiveness. very simple things that they've heard of all the tools. They just know how to use them.
Right.
And then the last piece is really, how do we build a team? How do we build a team that will allow you as the entrepreneur to get scale and get leverage, even if you're just getting started, right? So today, I just think about something that happened the other day. I've got 180 photos that I needed to get optimized for the website. So if your listeners don't know, it's a bad idea to put high resolution, high file size images on your website. It's one of the things that we do in our world. So I had 180 images that I'd sourced from my iPhone and that I'm using in a lifestyle campaign. And they're all sitting at 1 megabyte, 2 megabytes, 3 megabytes. By the way, on your website, they really shouldn't be more than about, best case, under 100 kilobytes, 200, 250 kilobytes, because some of them are just so big.
I heard like 500 to 600. It's like really pushing it, but could work.
You can get away with 500, but it'll start to weigh the site down. But my point is, I had 188 images. Now, do I know how to go into these tools and download and get these images done? Yeah, I know how to go in and optimize the images. I know how to upload them and compress them. But instead, I go onto a little website and I paid someone $16 and they did it in like 3 or 4 hours. I went off and did my thing and they came back exactly what I needed. People just don't understand how many resources are available on this planet. So we talk about, how do we get things done without it feeling like overwhelm? And then how do you then bring on team when the time is right? How do you actually lay a roadmap out so that you know who you should hire, right? How do you hire the right person? These are all the big problems with what I call solopreneurs or small businesses really growing and getting out of the what I call the entrepreneurial trap. And those are the things we do in our coaching program. We really I think of us as liberators. Like, we were just trying to show people what we've done and give people the roadmap and the tool and the blueprints, the frameworks, the shortcuts, if you will, so that they just don't have to go through the pain and the anguish, that I've gone through and a lot of our clients have gone through. So we're just trying to create pathways to increase the prosperity of entrepreneurs.
That's awesome. It's one of those, I'm thinking again back on a topic as I listen to you, and the biggest one with the system and processes and the who's holding the ladder. There, martial arts one again. There's a very wealthy guy that his name's Harry. Actually, I need to figure out how to get him on this show. But it's one of those, his neighbors used to be the Kardashians. So I'm like, okay, what do you do to make so much money that you actually make the Kardashian houses look like punty little trailer park compared to yours? And he said, oh, I just have rules and systems in place with my business that, because he's like, for him, he's like, I have to go to Malaysia for a month or two to talk to my supplier, and my business is still running without me. And I was like, okay, how does this work? Like, explain this to me. So he did. It was essentially through multiple series of events. And he explained it, but he said, the biggest one you need to understand, he's like, because he did his little budget thing. He's like, okay, how much do you make? Okay, how much do you spend? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay, can you afford to keep $200 a month to yourself? Never touch it again for 50 years. And I'm like, yeah, 200, that's not hard, kind of thing. And that's where he said, do that. And then talk to me when you have $10,000. 2 years later, I had $10,000. I also got more aggressive and started putting more in. And that's where he said, good, you've already beat most people your age.
Yep.
He said, now learn to invest it. And it was just one of those, like, because he has stocks and all that. I'm like, okay, so that started the seed of the tree, which the March like solidified. And I always give him credit. I actually need to call him. I just tell him, like, thank you, because like for you, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I'll admit it. Like, he got me to pretty much where I'm at.
Simple.
Or not.
So such good advice. Such good advice. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot. $200 for 50 years, and I think I remember when I was in college, I went through an exercise it was like, if you put away $2,000 a year, starting at the age 25, stopped at 40, by 60 or 65, you were a millionaire. So you'd only have to do it for 15 years. Now, if you kept doing it and it was just a $2,000 a year, the reality of it is anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. Right. And then you talk about what you can do with businesses. You can obviously compound that. You compound that quite a bit.
And that's what he was saying. He's like, this skill set, he's like, this is just general stuff, but he's like, this really applies to finances. which is how you achieve your freedom that you're wanting.
That's right.
And it's just one of those, I've recently told him, I'm like, thank you. Like, if it wasn't for that, just simple advice. Now looking back, I'd give the same advice to some kid on the street for free that's aspiring to kind of thing. It's just second nature. It's the foundation of true understanding of how to move about the cabin freely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just curious, how long do I got you? Because I feel like we could go easy 2 hours.
I've got about 10 minutes or so.
I noticed it in your eyes. That's where I was like, I better ask the question. Absolute honor and pleasure to pick your brain.
No, absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
3 going out questions. It's really simple. So other than work, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy during these lockdown times?
I started running.
Really?
So I've been an athlete. I'm an athlete guy. I work out. I've been, I go through my years where I'm a little off my game from here and there. I used to work out and train with a guy who was a professional bodybuilder who was in a wheelchair, best friend of mine. And so that was very exciting for a number of years. But so the pandemic started and we shut our office down. We had an office here in Vegas, full staff and all the whole bit. So we shut it down and stayed virtual. We decided later in the summer of 2020, towards the fall, to go ahead and rent out the office to another company who wanted to use the space. And they ended up taking us out of that space. But the punchline is I was all of a sudden at home full time, where I've always worked part-time from home, part-time in the office. I've always had an office for 20 years, but I've been working from a desk for 23 years now. So I started running. I'm a flat-footed guy. So that was an interesting challenge. I just said, let me get out of the house and go do some things. And of course, we couldn't go to the gym at the time, and working out from home. I've been working out from home for 10 years. So I had actually stopped working out of the gym, and all of a sudden now I'm locked in the house. I'm starting to feel some kind of way.
Yeah, so fever's really kicking in.
I got to get out of here. So I started running. So that's been the fun thing. Been an interesting challenge. I realized I started buying better shoes, and just taking on some challenges. So I ended up starting with running like getting up to a 5K, running at about 11 and I don't know, it was like 11 minutes and 40 seconds. And then I did a 30-day running challenge and I got it down to like 10, 20. So that was kind of cool. And then I got it down to 10, and then I got it down to like 9:45. And then I kind of was cool with that number. I wasn't trying to go run a marathon, but that's been an interesting adventure for me. And I'm still running, and now I'm doing different sorts of running, on the treadmill, off the treadmill. So running's been pretty interesting for me.
That's awesome. That's actually a first for me. Most people are like, oh, we took up knitting or watching Netflix for once in our life kind of thing. I'm like, well, at least you got to watch Netflix.
Right.
So someone aspiring to be like you, what are some tips, tricks, or advice to get them started down the path that you're on?
I say this a lot, and I wish I could stop saying it, but it's the truth. And that is decide. One of the things I didn't do, I could have been an entrepreneur and I could have been a full-time entrepreneur starting at 20 when I first started that little side hustle, but I just didn't decide. I started it to try it. At 23, when I went in real estate, I remember this guy named Craig, who was one of our agency managers. He was like, Darrell, you could be phenomenal at this. But I was just trying real estate because I was interested, because you know how you do, you just try things. Mm-hmm. So I tell people all the time that the number one thing you have to do whenever you want to do something is decide what it is that you want out of the thing you're doing. So if you want to be an entrepreneur 30 years from now, if you want to live life on your terms, if you want to have the opportunity to have unlimited financial potential and live where you want, drive what you want, do all the stuff, as they say, you've got to decide. But you can't just decide that that's the goal. You've got to decide, what kind of value am I going to bring to the world that will give me the opportunity to do those things? You have to decide, what kind of pathways am I going to create for other talented people to align with my vision? But it all starts with a decision. I learned in 1992 or 1991, 92 is when I read this book. And your listeners probably would be familiar. If not, go look him up. He's pretty famous. His name is Anthony Robbins. And
I read
the Giant. I read Awaken the Giant Within. I read Unlimited Power first, Awaken the Giant Within second, again, somewhere in that early 90s window. And I took something away from that book. And as with anything, you read a book that's got 300, 400 pages, and there's always 2 or 3 major things that are going to come out of it. It doesn't matter how many pages are in the book. Generally, you get 2 or 3 major things out of it. one of the things I got out of it was it's at the moment of your decision that your destiny is shaped. So then the other piece is it must be a committed decision. And so a committed decision means, I like to use the phrase, you've drawn a line in the sand. That means going back is not an option, right? So, there's stories about certain war generals where they've literally taken an island, they've gone to an island to fight the war, and they burn the boats, means we're staying here until the battle is won. I used that phrase in my agency, 2015. We made a strategic decision to change the structure and scope of our agency. We had, our team that was with us at the time, we had meetings, and we had to validate the reason for the change. We asked for our team's commitment to that change, because when we said we're making this change, we are not going back. And so I think that's one of the big things, is that the power of making a committed decision is huge. So there's ways to know if you've made a committed decision. There's ways to uncover that. I teach that in some of my coaching work, but there's ways to peel back whether or not this is a decision that you're committed to, or whether it's maybe a popular idea.
Oh, 100%. There's so much good nuggets right there just alone. All right. So the hard hitting question, where can everyone get you?
Say, what was the question?
The hard hitting question, where can everyone reach you at?
Oh, great. I'm sorry. I missed it somehow. No, I appreciate it. Listen, if you've enjoyed anything that I've said today, or if you've enjoyed some of the concepts or thoughts or ideas, I would just encourage you to listen to my podcast, which is the Mindshift podcast. And it's available wherever you're listening to Josh's show. Just look up the Mindshift podcast with Darrell Evans. It is free at this time. There's no fee to subscribe. And that's probably the best way to connect with me. You can hear where I'm at online from the show, Instagram, and all that stuff. But if you thought I had said anything worth your attention and worth going deeper, come over to the Mindshift podcast. I talk to people like Josh does, who are really big thought leaders. I'm always a learner, which is why I love you, Josh. You're a constant learner. In fact, the name of my company is CanI365, and it means constant and never-ending improvement, 365 days a year. That's the overarching theme of how I operate. So if that is of interest, the Mindshift podcast with Darrell Evans, wherever you're listening to this show, would be great.
Wonderful. Absolute honor and a pleasure. It truly was.
Likewise, Josh. Appreciate your work, man, and love connecting with you.
Well, congratulations. You made it to the end. You're an awesome person. Not many make it here. So, being the awesome person that you are, can you do me one more awesome favor? Can you rate and review this on whatever podcast services you're using? If you do it on Apple and you leave an actual written review, I have a thing on my website. I will take your written review and post it for all to see. Congratulations, you're permanently sealed on my site. Otherwise, I am trying to do YouTube more and live streaming. I will try to put as many of the YouTube links in the description of the show as I can. So give your boy some extra help over on YouTube. Watch my videos. I just mute it and change the channel, change the window or something. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for being awesome, and see you next time.